The golden glow of the 1950s often brings to mind a simpler world, gleaming kitchens, tidy lawns, and families that never seemed to falter. But behind every smile framed by a black and white television screen, there were stories that were far from perfect. The show Father Knows Best stood as a symbol of that decade, its fictional Anderson family embodying the values of stability, warmth, and love that America longed to believe in. Yet, beneath the polished surface, darker truths and surprising realities existed, truths that were hidden in plain sight. How much of what we saw was carefully crafted illusion? And how often do we forget that the people who played these roles were living lives far more complex than the ones scripted for them? At the heart of Father Knows Best was the house, the Anderson family home that millions of viewers could recognize instantly. It wasn't just any set. This house had already lived several lives before it ever welcomed Jim, Margaret, Betty, Bud, and Kathy. Originally built in 1941 for the Blondie movie series on the Columbia Pictures backlit, it became a familiar fixture in Hollywood. Over the decades, it transformed itself again and again, later standing proudly as Mr. Wilson's house in Dennis the Menace and as the home of astronaut Tony Nelson in I Dream of Jeannie. Its walls carried memories of countless fictional families, and its enduring presence made it one of the most famous houses in television history. For years it stood as a symbol of timeless Americana until 2023, when the Warner Ranch property was demolished, erasing a piece of Hollywood history that had shaped generations of viewers. The man who held this household together on screen was Robert Young, the calm and reassuring presence of Jim Anderson. To audiences, he seemed unshakable, the perfect father who always had the right words. But in reality, Young's life was far from serene. For decades, he battled depression and alcoholism, carrying an emotional weight that clashed painfully with the soothing character he portrayed. Despite acting in more than 100 films, Young often felt overlooked by Hollywood, his talent minimized in ways that only deepened his sense of isolation. His struggles eventually led to a suicide attempt in 1991, brought on by worsening health and years of inner torment. Yet, instead of retreating into despair, Young transformed his pain into purpose. In his later years, he became an outspoken advocate for mental health, working to change legislation and offering support for those who felt invisible, as he once had. A mental health center was even named in his honor, cementing his legacy not only as a beloved actor but also as a man who used his scars to help others heal. His story reflects the sharp divide between what the world sees and what often hides behind closed doors. But not all of the hidden layers behind Father Knows Best belong to its cast. In one of the most unusual twists in television history, the U.S. Treasury Department secretly commissioned a special episode in 1959 titled 24 Hours in Tyrant Land. Unlike the cheerful family tales that filled living rooms each week, this episode placed the Andersons under the thumb of a dictatorship. It was never broadcast on television but was instead shown in schools and community centers, designed to highlight the value of American freedom and encourage the purchase of U.S. savings bonds. At the height of Cold War fears, the government knew that the Anderson family, trusted and loved by millions, could be powerful messengers. This unusual episode revealed just how closely media and politics were intertwined, with even a wholesome family sitcom becoming a tool for subtle propaganda. The youngest daughter on the show, Kathy Kitten Anderson, played by Lauren Chapin, became one of the most tragic figures in its aftermath. Like many child stars of her time, her life was defined as much by what audiences couldn't see as by what they could. After the series ended, Chapin found herself typecast, struggling to find work as she grew older. Her private life was marked by childhood trauma, including sexual abuse, that left deep scars. In an attempt to numb the pain, she turned to drugs, eventually descending into heroin addiction. Arrests, violent outbursts, and time spent in institutions followed, painting a grim contrast to the sweet and innocent child viewers remembered. For years, her life spiraled out of control until she found hope through faith, embracing Christianity during rehabilitation. Though her story eventually took a turn toward redemption, it remains a haunting reminder of how cruel fame can be, especially to children who never truly had the chance to grow up outside the spotlight. Billy Gray, who played Bud Anderson, faced his own downfall, though in very different circumstances. In 1962, he was arrested for marijuana possession after a simple police stop. What might seem minor today was a devastating scandal at the time. The arrest not only shattered his image as the wholesome Anderson son but also effectively ended his career in Hollywood. Gray, who had used marijuana since his early teens, served a short prison sentence, but the punishment outside of prison was far harsher. Dropped by his agent and branded as unreliable, he found doors closed everywhere he turned. For audiences, the scandal served as a sobering lesson about the rigid moral expectations placed on television stars, expectations that rarely allowed for human mistakes. Behind the camera, Father Knows Best was pioneering in ways many viewers never realized. It was among the first shows to adopt the laugh track, a tool created by sound engineer Charles Douglas. Known as the laugh box, this device allowed producers to insert recorded audience reactions, mimicking the energy of a live studio audience. Producer Eugene B. Rodney was deeply involved in perfecting the use of the laugh track, sometimes moved to tears as he worked on the timing of each laugh and chuckle. This innovation not only shaped the atmosphere of the show but also left a permanent mark on television, influencing countless comedies that came after. Jane Wyatt, who played Margaret Anderson, was often seen on-screen in pearls, keeping a pristine home while gently guiding her family. But off-screen, she admitted that this picture-perfect homemaker was far removed from her own life. Coming from a wealthy background, Wyatt had never experienced the daily grind of housework in the same way her character did. She joked about never vacuuming in pearls, acknowledging the irony of her role. In truth, her real life was worlds apart from the one she portrayed, illustrating once again how much of Father Knows Best was fantasy carefully crafted for television. Even the set itself had its own stories. The Anderson family kitchen was unusually realistic for a show of its time. Unlike many productions that relied on fake appliances, the kitchen's devices worked, from the refrigerator to the coffee pot. The cast and crew often used the kitchen to prepare real meals, filling the set with the smell of fresh coffee and baked rolls. This commitment to realism wasn't just about appearance. It created an atmosphere that felt authentic for those working long hours on set. It allowed actors to inhabit their roles more naturally, blurring the line between performance and reality in subtle ways. Eleanor Donahue, who played Betty Anderson, faced an unexpected challenge when she became pregnant during the show's run. Because her character was a teenager, the producers couldn't write the pregnancy into the storyline. Instead, they relied on creative tricks, bulky coats, carefully placed props, and even having her stand behind furniture during scenes. Despite these efforts, her condition eventually became obvious, leading her to miss episodes during the later stages of her pregnancy. In a way, this silent attempt to conceal her real life mirrored television's reluctance to deal with issues that didn't fit the carefully managed family image. Interestingly, the original Father Knows Best didn't start on television at all. It began as a radio show, and in that version, Jim Anderson was nothing like the warm, supportive father that Robert Young later made famous. Instead, he was sarcastic, stern, and sometimes outright mean, relying on sharp humor and put-downs that reflected the style of radio comedies at the time. The transformation from the radio's harsh father to television's gentle one was deliberate. Robert Young himself pushed for the change, requesting not only a new tone but an entirely new cast, believing that audiences needed warmth and support more than sarcasm. That decision shaped the series' identity and helped cement it as one of the most beloved family sitcoms of its era. What many people forget is that Father Knows Best nearly didn't survive. It was canceled not once, but twice. Its first run on CBS in 1954 was a failure, partly because of a poor time slot. But audience demand for the show was strong, and NBC picked it up, giving it a new home where it flourished for 3 seasons. Even after NBC canceled it, CBS brought it back, running it for 2 more seasons. This tug-of-war between networks reflected just how much viewers loved The Andersons and how fragile a show's survival could be in those early days of television. The production itself demanded immense effort from its cast and crew. Workdays stretched to 12 hours, 6 days a week, and rehearsals were extensive, sometimes bordering on obsessive. Director Peter Tewksbury insisted on perfecting every detail, from the way a line was spoken to how an actor buttered toast. These endless rehearsals were exhausting, but they created performances that felt natural and authentic, helping the show stand apart from many of its contemporaries. For William Russell, one of the show's directors, success wasn't measured by ratings or reviews, but by his own tears. If a scene moved him to cry, he believed it had truly worked. This unusual method of judging a performance created a unique bond between the cast and the story, ensuring that even lighthearted family moments carried genuine emotional weight. The Andersons' fictional home was set at 607 South Maple Street in Springfield, Illinois. Unlike other shows that avoided specific locations to appeal to a wider audience, Father Knows Best embraced this grounding detail, making Springfield a symbol of small-town America. Years later, Matt Groening would pay tribute by naming the hometown of The Simpsons Springfield, a subtle nod to the Andersons' influence. Jane Wyatt's career extended far beyond Father Knows Best, and interestingly, she would later receive more fan mail for her role as Spock's mother in Star Trek than she ever did as Margaret Anderson. Her performance as Amanda Grayson captivated a whole new generation, proving how one role can unexpectedly overshadow decades of steady work. It was a reminder that actors, like the characters they play, can be remembered in ways no one could predict. When we look back at Father Knows Best, it's tempting to view it only as a nostalgic relic of television's golden age. But beneath its polished exterior lay stories of heartbreak, perseverance, innovation, and cultural influence. From Robert Young's hidden pain and Lauren Chapin's tragic struggles to Billy Gray's scandal and the government's surprising involvement, the show was never as simple as it appeared. Even the kitchen appliances and the backlit house carried stories of authenticity and transformation. These layers remind us that television has always been more than entertainment. It reflects the ideals we cling to, the realities we hide, and the ways we use media to define who we are. The Andersons may have seemed like the perfect family, but the truth reveals something much more human. And maybe that's why the show still matters today. Not because it offered a flawless version of family life, but because, behind the curtain, it was as complicated as the families watching it. Thank you for spending this time reflecting on the untold stories of Father Knows Best. If you enjoyed uncovering the real history behind this beloved classic, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more stories from the hidden corners of Hollywood history.